Dubai was supposed to be untouchable. The city that turned desert into a skyline, that made billionaires feel like they were just getting started. And now, quietly, something is shifting. Some of the biggest luxury names in the world are pulling back. Leases are not being renewed. Flagship stores are closing. And the people running those businesses are not talking about it publicly. That silence is actually the most interesting part of this story. Because if Dubai is struggling, what does that tell us about where money is really going right now, and more importantly, where smart people are quietly repositioning themselves while everyone else is still looking at the old map? Stay with this, because the answer is not what the headlines are saying. Let us go back to how Dubai was built, because context matters here. Dubai was never a naturally wealthy city. It had oil, yes, but the leadership there made a calculated bet decades ago that oil would eventually run out or lose value. So they built an economy on something else entirely: tourism, real estate, luxury retail, and the idea that Dubai was the place you went when you had made it. That idea was the product. Not the hotels. Not the malls. The idea. And for a long time, it worked spectacularly. The Burj Khalifa became the most photographed building on Earth. Dubai Mall became the most visited shopping mall in the world. Brands like Gucci, Louis Vuitton, Rolex, and Chanel opened multiple locations there because the foot traffic and the spending were real. So what changed? Here is the first thing most people are missing. The luxury retail model globally is under pressure, not just in Dubai. What happened post-2020 was that ultra-wealthy consumers shifted their spending patterns dramatically. They started spending more on experiences, private travel, and services, and less on physical luxury goods sitting in glass cases in a mall. That shift hit every luxury retail market, but it hit Dubai harder because Dubai had built so much of its identity around the physical theater of luxury shopping. But that is only part of the story. The more interesting part is what is happening with the people who used to be Dubai's core customer base. For years, Dubai benefited enormously from wealthy Russian, Chinese, and European visitors. Russians in particular were enormous spenders in Dubai. After 2022, that flow was complicated significantly. Wealthy Chinese tourists, who Dubai had been aggressively courting, largely redirected their travel toward domestic luxury experiences inside China as Beijing made that a cultural priority. The customer base that Dubai had depended on for a decade quietly contracted. At the same time, the cost of operating in Dubai increased. Rents in prime retail locations in Dubai Mall and Mall of the Emirates are among the highest in the world. When your foot traffic changes even slightly but your lease costs stay the same, the math stops working. Brands start doing quiet calculations. A flagship that made sense in 2018 does not necessarily make sense in 2024. And here is what should actually make you stop and think for a second. The brands that are pulling back are not struggling brands. These are profitable global companies making strategic decisions about where their money works hardest. When Rolex or a similarly positioned brand does not renew a lease in Dubai, they are not going out of business. They are reading a signal. They are deciding that the return on that specific location no longer justifies the cost. That is a data point, not a crisis. The crisis framing is what the internet loves because crisis gets clicks. But the real story is more useful to you. What the data is actually showing is a redistribution. Luxury spending is not disappearing. It is moving. And the places it is moving to are genuinely surprising if you have not been watching closely. Southeast Asia is absorbing a significant portion of it. Singapore has positioned itself aggressively as the new financial and lifestyle capital for Asia's wealthy. Bangkok, Bali, and certain parts of Vietnam are pulling a younger demographic of high-earning remote workers and digital entrepreneurs who are creating a new kind of luxury economy, one that is less about $5,000 handbags and more about premium experiences, wellness, and belonging to the right communities. The Middle East itself is diversifying. Saudi Arabia is spending hundreds of billions building tourism infrastructure. Riyadh and Neom are not quiet projects. Abu Dhabi has been systematically positioning itself as the cultural alternative to Dubai for several years now. The Louvre Abu Dhabi was not an accident. It was a statement. And if you are sitting somewhere in the UK, the US, or Ghana watching this and thinking this has nothing to do with your life, here is the part that actually does. The thing Dubai's situation is revealing is something that applies everywhere. The places and systems that seemed permanent, that seemed like they had figured it all out, are more fragile than they look. Not because they are badly run, but because the world underneath them is shifting faster than the infrastructure built on top of it. The people who built real stability over the last 5 years are not the ones who locked into one city, one job title, or one income stream. They are the ones who read what was changing early and made quiet decisions that looked strange to their friends at the time. The remote worker who moved to Lisbon in 2021 when everyone told her she was being reckless. The guy who started building online income alongside his regular job while his colleagues thought he was wasting his evenings. The couple who decided to spend a year in Southeast Asia instead of buying the house they were not really sure they wanted. None of them had a guarantee. They had a read on where things were going. Dubai is not collapsing. That framing is lazy. What Dubai is doing is recalibrating, the same way every city and every person eventually has to when the assumptions they were built on start to shift. The real question this story asks you is a personal one. What assumptions are you still running your life on that were formed 5 or 10 years ago? What looks permanent to you right now that might be in the middle of its own quiet recalibration? Because the people who caught Dubai's rise early did not do it by being smarter. They did it by being willing to look at what was actually happening instead of what the consensus said was true. That same window is open right now, in different places, in different forms. The only question is whether you are paying attention.